You took an oath to do no harm. You went to medical school, specialized in cardiothoracic surgery, and spent your life learning how to keep the human heart beating. But in Mexico, the line between healing a man and loading his gun is a lot thinner than anyone wants to admit. You don't start out working for the boss. You start at the very bottom, treating the collateral damage of a billion-dollar empire until you become the most essential, invisible gear in the machine. This is what it's like to be the personal heart surgeon for the cartel, and how you trade your soul for a quiet, comfortable life. Level 1. The Watcher's Doctor. Your descent into the underworld doesn't begin in a sterile operating room. It starts in a chaotic public emergency ward in Guadalajara. They bring in a 14-year-old kid with a gunshot wound to the chest. He was caught in the crossfire of a street dispute. You manage to repair the damage, stopping the bleeding just in time. While he recovers, you learn who he is. He is a watcher. Nobody told him to quit school, but he stopped going to class 3 months ago because his little brother wanted new shoes. He makes exactly 200 pesos a day to stand on a corner for 12-hour shifts with absolutely no breaks. His instructions are burned into his memory. Look for unmarked cars, slow drivers, cameras, military plates, and police uniforms. If he sees military trucks, he texts a bird emoji. If he sees black SUVs with tiny windows, he texts a snake to warn of a rival cartel. He tells you he stands 3 doors down from a house that processes crystal meth. He's never been inside, but he knows it from the sweet and chemical smell. The older guys who go in and out treat him like furniture. But when a truck circles the block twice, his thumb types a warning, and 30 seconds later, the stash house is empty. You save his life, and the next day a man drops off a thick envelope of cash at your clinic. You don't ask questions, you just take the money. That is your first mistake. Level 2, the transporter's surgeon. 3 months later, you aren't at the hospital. A burner phone rings, and you are directed to a transmission shop owned by a man missing 3 fingers. Lying on a greasy workbench is a 17-year-old kid. He caught a bullet during a bad run, and the cartel doesn't send wounded men to public hospitals. You dig the bullet out of his shoulder while he clenches his teeth. He is a transporter. He tells you he drives from Guadalajara to Zacatecas, smuggling 15 kilos of crystal meth wrapped in carbon paper and sealed in PVC tubes welded directly inside the frame of his truck. Sometimes the older guys drive white semi-trucks from Sinaloa to Tijuana, hiding 500 kilograms of methamphetamine welded into the floor underneath hundreds of watermelons. He tells you the military checkpoint at kilometer 97 is the ultimate test. They stop every 5th vehicle, so he learns to count the cars and time his approach. When he makes it, he gets his cut in an envelope and hides his 30,000 pesos inside a hollowed-out Bible at his grandmother's house, telling her he works delivery for a phone company. His cousin is serving 15 to 20 years in Altiplano prison for doing this exact job. But the cartel didn't send lawyers. They just found a new driver. You stitch him up, take your 3,000 peso cut, and realize you are actively keeping this massive machine running. Level 3, the enforcer's heartbeat. You graduate to treating the violent men who solve the cartel's problems. They don't call themselves sicarios. That word is for the movies. They are enforcers. You are called to a safe house to treat a 19-year-old who took shrapnel during a hit. As you listen to his chest with your stethoscope, you realize his heart rate is completely calm. He has lost count of his bodies. He casually tells you about his work. He receives encrypted messages containing a photo and a location, but never an explanation. Just last week, his target was a state prosecutor in Colima who had been making noise about the CJNG methamphetamine labs. The enforcer waited outside the prosecutor's gym at 6 a.m. When the man came out in running clothes with earbuds in, the enforcer walked up, put 2 shots into his head, and was fleeing on a motorcycle before anyone even screamed. The news called it a cycle of violence. But this 19-year-old just changed the channel and cleaned his gun. Because of his violence, he makes $1,500 a week, drives a used BMW, and his mother lives in a gated community where the neighbors think he is an import-export guy. Tonight, his encrypted phone tells him to hunt a 16-year-old rival scout who has been taking notes on CJNG safe houses and reporting to Sinaloa. He feels absolutely nothing looking at the photo. You check his vitals, pack up your medical bag, and realize you are fixing monsters so they can go back out into the dark. Level 4, the Territory Commander's Stress. Your skills are recognized by the higher-ups. You are summoned to a secure compound to treat a territory commander, a plaza boss who controls 23 square kilometers of Guadalajara. Every gram sold, every business paying protection, and every illegal operation runs directly through him. He manages 40 people, watchers, transporters, and enforcers. You are here because the crushing pressure of the job is giving him severe, stress-induced chest pains. While you check his blood pressure, you witness how the system truly operates. He tells you the local police commander gets 30,000 pesos a month, on time and never late, to ensure patrols completely avoid his territory between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. when his people move product. You watch him dispatch 2 enforcers to a restaurant where the owner is 2 weeks behind on his 3,000 peso protection fee. The enforcers don't touch the owner. They just stand there silently until the terrified man finds the cash. Fear maintains itself. When the military announces an operation in his zone, his paid contact gives him 3 days' notice. He smoothly mobilizes his watchers to track the convoy and scatters his heavy weapons across dozens of normal-looking houses. By the time the military arrives, they search for 6 hours and arrest nobody, while the commander watches them from a coffee shop 3 blocks away. You prescribe him medication for his heart and realize he is the absolute king of his concrete jungle. Level 5, the financial controller's panic. The dark money you are making is staggering, and you need a way to hide it. You are introduced to the cartel's financial controller. His office features glass walls and overlooks the ocean. He has never touched methamphetamine in his life. His only product is spreadsheets. He helps you wash your surgical fees through the same system he uses for the cartel. He turns 15 million pesos of drug money into legitimate wealth through a chain of 11 restaurants and a massive construction company building a luxury resort in Puerto Vallarta. He uses Panamanian shell companies, cryptocurrency, cold storage, and real estate through offshore trusts. He builds a structure so complex that investigators need warrants in 6 different countries just to follow a single transaction. But today, his heart is violently racing. He is having a panic attack. The U.S. Treasury just flagged one of his companies. A contact warned him before the investigation went public, and he was forced to dissolve the entire entity in 48 hours, moving assets through 3 countries and creating new corporations with different names. By the time the Treasury got their warrant, they found empty offices and disconnected phones. He tells you he briefs the regional chiefs monthly. They don't understand the financial complexity, they just know the money flows. But he knows that being valuable today means being a liability tomorrow. He strictly maintains 3 passports, accounts in banks that don't share information, and properties in countries without extradition, just in case. You realize you need an exit plan, too. Level 6, the Regional Commanders episode. You are flown on a private plane to a heavily guarded location. You are here to treat a regional commander, a man whose authority covers 3 entire states, Jalisco, Colima, and Michoacan. He manages massive methamphetamine facilities hidden deep in the mountains and sprawling distribution networks from Tijuana to Cancun. But right now, he is clutching his chest, suffering a severe cardiac episode. The cause of his failing heart isn't cholesterol, it's a massive missing shipment. 4 tons of crystal meth, with a street value of 50 million pesos, vanished in Manzanillo. You stand silently in the corner, monitoring his heart rate while he calls an emergency meeting. Every territory commander in Colima sits before him. One of them is sweating heavily. The regional commander doesn't yell or accuse. He simply explains the situation and gives them 48 hours. 2 days later, you hear that the sweating commander was found hanging from an overpass with a banner that read, "This is what happens to thieves." Suddenly, the commander's private phone rings. It is El Mencho's inner circle. They want a face-to-face meeting in Tapalpa. The commander's heart rate violently spikes on your monitor. At this level, a meeting means either a massive promotion or a bullet. He brings 20 armed men, former military and federal police, and learns he is being sent to handle Zacatecas, where the Sinaloa cartel is aggressively pushing into their territory. He is authorized to use maximum force. Pass, and he moves up. Fail, and he disappears forever. Level 7, the strategic lieutenant in the war room. You are finally brought into the absolute inner sanctum. You are treating the strategic lieutenant, a man who doesn't control street corners, but controls the grand strategy of the entire cartel. He decides which states to invade, which cartels to war with, and which officials to corrupt or kill. The DEA has a 300-page file on him, and there is a $5 million reward for his arrest. He hasn't seen daylight without armed guards in 5 years. You check his vitals inside the cartel's war room. Tactical maps cover 3 entire walls. Red zones are CJNG, blue is Sinaloa, yellow is Gulf Cartel, and black marks represent fiercely disputed areas. Zacatecas is turning black. The compound you are standing in has walls like a military base and anti-aircraft weapons mounted on the roof. This is because the CJNG doesn't run from the government, they fight it. Your patient tells you he was there in 2015 when they ordered a military helicopter shot down, and he helped plan the 2020 attack on the Mexico City police chief using grenades and high-powered rifles in broad daylight. You listen to his pulse as the room debates strategy. One lieutenant wants an all-out war, hitting every Sinaloa operation across 5 states. Another wants to negotiate and trade territory to reduce casualties. El Mencho sits at the head of the table in total silence. His silence is a test. His eyes move to your patient, asking for a recommendation. Your patient has exactly 30 seconds to read the situation. If he gets it wrong, he will be the next commander hanging from a bridge. You feel his heart thundering under your fingers as he takes a breath and speaks. Level 8, the heart of the devil. Eventually, you reach the absolute top. You are the personal physician for Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho. He built this horrifying empire from the dirt. Born in extreme poverty in Aguililla, Michoacan, a level of poverty Americans cannot even imagine. He crossed into California as a teenager, got arrested for heroin trafficking in San Francisco, and was deported. He became a police officer in Jalisco simply to understand how power worked, only to realize the badge wasn't where real power lived. When Ignacio Nacho Coronel died in 2010, El Mencho saw a massive opening. He created the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, not to participate in the drug trade, but to totally dominate it. By 2026, he runs the most powerful criminal organization in Mexico, operating methamphetamine and fentanyl networks in all 50 U.S. states, generating revenue that dramatically exceeds the GDP of small nations. You listen to his failing heart. It is the heart of a man with a $15 million U.S. government bounty on his head, the highest reward for any drug trafficker in history. The DEA calls him significantly more dangerous than El Chapo. In February, Trump officially labeled the CJNG a foreign terrorist organization. El Mencho responded with absolute terror, shooting down military helicopters, using commercial drones strapped with explosives, and mining public roads with deadly IEDs. But on your examination table, he is just a man whose empire is slowly crushing him. His family is being systematically dismantled piece by piece. His son Menchito is serving a life sentence in an American prison. His brother Antonio was extradited last week. His son-in-law was arrested in California. You realize you are treating a man who climbed from a poor farm boy to the most wanted man in Mexico. They will write narco corridos about him for generations, debating whether he was a criminal mastermind or a revolutionary. But you are the only one keeping his heart beating. Level 9, the raid and the endless cycle. It is February 22nd, 2026. You are at the heavily fortified compound in Tapalpa, checking El Mencho's vitals when the military helicopters come at dawn. The Mexican army and federal forces have been hunting him for years. He evaded them in the past by burning vehicles across highways, ambushing federal police, and completely disappearing into treacherous mountains that only the locals know. But this time, they came fully prepared. Gunfire violently erupts across the compound. The security detail heavily engages the military forces. El Mencho grabs his rifle. You don't stay. You grab your medical bag and you run. You know how this story ends for the bosses. Eventually, they are captured. They are sent to the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado, spending 23 hours a day in total isolation, surrounded by concrete walls and a heavy steel door with absolutely no windows. They had billions and an international empire, and now they have 4 concrete walls and the rest of their natural lives to think about every single person they killed to get there. But you know the darkest truth of all. The cartel absolutely does not die when the boss's heart stops beating. A nephew takes over, or a son, or an ambitious lieutenant. Someone always steps up to take the throne. The drugs keep flowing across the border, the massive amounts of money keep moving, and the bodies keep piling up in the streets because the cycle never, ever ends. The old kings become legends and ghost stories, cautionary tales that parents quietly tell their kids about what happens when you think you are untouchable. You look at your surgical hands. You kept the devil alive. And meanwhile, right now, there is another 14-year-old kid sitting outside a convenience store in Culiacan. He's watching the road. He's holding a cheap phone. He's hungry, and he's eagerly waiting for his chance. This isn't just a gang. It is a massive billion-dollar empire built entirely on blood and corruption. And because of people like you, it is still running.